If you think emotional comic art is just drawing somebody crying, Spider-Man proves just how wrong that is. His most painful images usually do the complete opposite. They pull back, they go quiet, they make Peter Parker look small, leave space around him, and force us to sit with something that he cannot punch, web up, or escape with a joke. Now, these 6 pieces use 6 different tools to create emotion: isolation, restraint, loss, guilt, tenderness, and finally sacrifice with a sense of peace. There are major comic spoilers ahead, but these stories are also decades old, so Spider-Man has had a slightly more time to recover than the rest of us. But by the end, I want to show you why emotional art is not about making a character perform sadness. It is about distance, silence, body language, colour, and what the artist deliberately refuses to show. So let's begin with one of the most iconic Spider-Man images ever drawn. This is from The Amazing Spider-Man number 50, drawn by John Romita Sr. Peter has decided to stop being Spider-Man and abandon the costume and walked away. What makes this image work is the separation. Peter is pushed into the distance with his back turned to us. The costume is enormous in the foreground, hanging lifelessly over the bin, as though the identity itself has been discarded. The proportions are emotionally reversed. Spider-Man, the larger-than-life hero, dominates the page as an empty shell. Peter Parker, the actual person carrying the decision, looks tiny. The alley leads him away from us. The buildings close in, the rain breaks up the page, and nothing in the environment offers us comfort. Most superheroes retire with a dramatic speech. Peter leaves his work clothes in an alley and walks off like he's finally had enough of the night shift. But beneath that slightly ridiculous practical detail, the meaning is painfully clear. He is not only leaving the costume, he is trying to separate himself from responsibility, guilt, and the part of his life that keeps hurting him. The strongest decision is that we can't see his face. Romita makes the posture and the distance carry the emotion. Isolation is not simply drawing someone alone, it is making the space around them feel larger than what they are. The second example is The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man, from The Amazing Spider-Man number 248, written by Roger Stern and penciled by Ron Frenz and inked by Terry Austin. Spider-Man visits Tim Harrison, a young fan who's dying from leukemia. This could have been drawn with enormous tears, dramatic shadows, and every emotional alarm switched on. Instead, the artwork just stays ordinary. It is mostly a conversation in a small room. Spider-Man sits beside the bed. Tim looks tired, but still reacts like a child meeting his hero. The panels are clean and direct, with no spectacle competing against the human connection. Then Peter removes his mask. That changes the entire scene. The mask usually protects his identity, but here it would create emotional distance. So Peter gives Tim something almost nobody receives: complete trust. And just look at this hug. It is not perfectly staged or heroic. Peter bends awkwardly over the bed. Tim reaches around him and the pose feels real because it is allowed to feel slightly messy. Then Peter leaves, puts the mask back on and swings away. Only afterwards does the final page reveal the full truth. The building is a cancer clinic and Tim has very little time left. The story does not scream at you. It lets that information arrive after the warmth of the meeting. That is restraint. The emotion lands harder because the artists, they don't chase it. They trust the reader to understand what the moment meant. Then we reach The Amazing Spider-Man number 121, The Death of Gwen Stacy, penciled by Kane and inked by Robert Romita Sr. The sequence is devastating because it turns a rescue into a loss in the space of a few panels. Gwen falls, Spider-Man tries to save her. The narrow vertical panels emphasize height, speed, and desperation. Then the web captures her. For one brief moment, Peter believes he saved her life, but the tiny sound effect beside her neck tells us something has gone wrong before Peter accepts it. That contrast is brutal. The pose of a heroic rescue is still there, but Gwen's body is completely limp. Spider-Man is active, upright, and frantic. She is just weight. The larger image of him holding her gives the tragedy room to settle. The action stops, the page becomes simply Peter, Gwen, and the fact that his powers just weren't enough. A defeated hero can get back up. Loss leaves the composition with something missing that just can't be restored. The artwork also forces us to experience Peter's delayed recognition. We see the truth in Gwen's body while he's still trying to deny it. That gap is where much of the pain lives. But Spider-Man's entire emotional foundation begins in the final page of Amazing Fantasy number 15, drawn by Steve Ditko. Peter has discovered that the burglar that he allowed to escape was the same man responsible for Uncle Ben's death. And look how little celebration there is. Peter caught the criminal. The action is finished. But the victory, it means nothing. The most important panel is the final one. Peter is reduced to a small figure walking alone in a dark street. No dramatic close-up, no heroic pose, no rain machine required. Just a person disappearing into the consequences of his own choice. The moon creates light behind him, but Peter moves away from it and into the darkness of the city. Ditko uses scale to strip away the superhero fantasy. Peter might have extraordinary powers, but in the moment, he looks powerless. The narration gives us the moral that will define Spider-Man forever. The image gives us the emotional cost of learning it. This is guilt rendered as distance. Peter cannot undo what's happened. He can't apologize to Ben. He cannot share the burden because nobody knows what he did. So the page leaves him alone with that. The fifth example comes from Spider-Man Blue by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, a series built around Peter remembering Gwen and the life they almost had together. Peter sits alone recording his memories onto tapes labeled with Gwen's name. Is essentially the saddest one-man podcast in Marvel history, but visually, the scene is incredibly restrained. The cold blue palette drains warmth from the room. Peter is pushed towards the edges of the panels or boxed into shadow. The tapes and photographs become physical evidence that he is trying to organise grief into something that he can understand. Then Mary Jane enters. The emotional power doesn't just come from jealousy or a dramatic confrontation. It comes from her recognising that loving Peter also means accepting the part of him that still misses Gwen. So the distance between them closes slowly. MJ listens before asking anything from him, and when she asks Peter to tell Gwen that she misses him too, grief stops being something he carries entirely alone. That is tenderness, not fixing the pain, not replacing the person who was lost, simply making the grief less lonely. Tim Sale's artwork understands that intimacy often lives in the small things. A hand entering the panel, a lowered face, two people sharing the same quiet room. Tenderness doesn't need spectacle, it just needs trust. And then we reach the final image, one that resonates with me the most. The Ultimate Universe's Peter Parker dies in Ultimate Spider-Man number 160 after saving Aunt May's life and the people that he loves. The issue was written by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by Mark Bagley, but the artwork we're looking at is not an interior panel. It is Joe Quesada's cover illustration for the collected death of Spider-Man's story. And honestly, it may be the most emotionally complete Spider-Man image of all of them. There is almost nothing in it, no city, no villains, no crowd mourning the hero, no action, just Uncle Ben and Peter walking away into the white light. Ben is larger, steadying Peter with one arm around his shoulders. Peter is still wearing the suit, but he's looking young again. Not like an icon, not like a hero who carried an entire universe, but just a kid who's finally reached the person that he spent his life trying to honor. And Ben tells him simply, "You did good, kid." Those 4 words resolve the guilt from Amazing Fantasy number 15. Peter could not save Uncle Ben. He built his entire identity around that failure. But this Peter dies knowing he saved Aunt May, Mary Jane, Gwen, and the people closest to him. The white space removes everything that no longer matters. There is no world left for him to protect, no danger left to face, only acceptance. Even their backs being turned matters. We're not invited into this reunion, we're watching them leave together, and that makes the image feel final without making it feel cruel. Spider-Man's story begins with a boy walking alone in the darkness after failing Uncle Ben, but this image ends with the same boy walking into the light beside him. So these pieces are emotional for completely different reasons. John Romita Sr. uses distance to make Peter feel isolated. John Frenz and Terry Austin use ordinary body language and restraint. Gil Kane and Romita turn a rescue pose into an irreversible loss. Steve Ditko uses scale and darkness to trap Peter inside his own guilt, and Tim Sale uses colour, silence and proximity to create tenderness. And Joe Quesada removes almost everything, leaving only forgiveness. The lesson for artists is that emotion is not a facial expression added to the end. It is built into the composition. And how close are we to the character? What surrounds them? What has been removed? Where is the empty space? Does the scene move quickly or force us to pause? What does the body communicate before the dialogue explains it? Tragedy is not automatically emotional. Death is not automatically emotional. And a crying face isn't automatically emotional. The viewer needs a relationship, a visual idea, and enough silence to feel it for themselves. So if you enjoy these professional breakdowns of comic art, posters, and visual storytelling, please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to keep analysing not only whether artwork looks good, but how artists use composition, colour, and storytelling to make it mean something. And tell me in the comments which Spider-Man image affects you the most. For me, it's the last one, but I want to hear your thoughts, as there are plenty that I couldn't include, so let me know which moment deserves a place in a second video. And if you are an artist trying to improve your portfolio, positioning, pricing, and ability to build a serious career around your work, I cover all of this in my book, The Profitable Artist, and the link to that is in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching.